Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, Mysterious Voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today it is Poetry Thursday, so I want to talk about some poetry that has interested me here. And today's poem is all about a woman's interesting confession. I am referring to an American poem by Eileen Myles. For those who don't know, Eileen Myles is an American poet who has been writing since the 1970s, late 70s. They have been mostly writing poetry, but they've also written, novels and essays and activist criticism in journals and whatnot. They've been pretty active in activism, of course, being highly critical of the Reagan administration and also being critical of the Bush senior administration, so much so that Eileen Myles even ran for president on the write-in ticket, which is fascinating. And someone even remarked, like, "I want a dyke president," as Eileen Myles is gay or something like that. I haven't found specific information about that, but these kind of ideas do show up in their poetry. Indeed, the reason I'm talking about, or not the reason, but one of the reasons I'm talking about Eileen Myles is because it's Pride season for me. Talking about Pride poets, LGBT poets, from late May until the end of July, just cataloging a wide variety of poets in that regard. So Eileen's poetry has really interested me, especially with the type of subjects and the political nature of their poetry. So without further ado, let's talk about an American poem. I will read it, do a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. An American poem. I was born in Boston in 1949. I never wanted this fact to be known. In fact, I've spent the better half of my adult life trying to sweep my early years under the carpet and have a life that was clearly just mine and independent of the historic fate of my family. Can you imagine what it was like to be one of them, to be built like them, to talk like them, to have the benefits of being born into such a wealthy and powerful American family? I went to the best schools, had all kinds of tutors and trainers, traveled widely, met the famous, the controversial, and the not so admirable, and I knew from a very early age that if there were ever any possibility of escaping the collective fate of this famous Boston family, I would take that route, and I have. I hopped on an Amtrak to New York in the early 70s, and I guess you could say my hidden years began. I thought, well, I'll be a poet. What could be more foolish and obscure? I became a lesbian. Every woman in my family looks like a dyke, but it's really stepping off the flag when you become one. While holding this ignominious pose, I have seen and I have learned, and I am beginning to think there is no escaping history. A woman I am currently having an affair with said, "You look like a Kennedy." I felt the blood rising in my cheeks. People have always laughed at my Boston accent, confusing large for lodge, party for potty. But when this unsuspecting woman invoked for the first time my family name, I knew the jig was up. Yes, I am. I am a Kennedy. My attempts to remain obscure have not served me well. Starting as a humble poet, I quickly climbed to the top of my profession, assuming a position of leadership and honor. It is right that a woman should call me out now. Yes, I am a Kennedy, and I await your orders. You are the new Americans. The homeless are wandering the streets of our nation's greatest city. Homeless men with AIDS are among them. Is that right? That there are no homes for the homeless? That there is no free medical help for these men and women? That they get the message as they are dying that this is not their home? And how are your teeth today? Can you afford to fix them? How high is your rent? If art is the highest and most honest form of communication of our times, and the young artist is no longer able to move here to speak to her time, yes, I could, but that was 15 years ago. And remember, as I must, I am a Kennedy. Shouldn't we all be Kennedys? This nation's greatest city is home of the businessman and home of the rich artist, people with beautiful teeth who are not on the streets. What shall we do about this dilemma? Listen, I have been educated, I have learned about Western civilization. Do you know what the message of Western civilization is? I am alone. Am I alone tonight? I don't think so. Am I the only one with bleeding gums tonight? Am I the only homosexual in this room tonight? Am I the only one whose friends have died, are dying now? And my art can't be supported until it is gigantic, bigger than everyone else's, confirming the audience's feelings that they are alone, that they alone are good, deserved to buy the tickets to see this art, are working, are healthy, should survive, and are normal. Are you normal tonight? Everyone here, are we all normal? Is it not normal for me to be a Kennedy? But I am no longer ashamed, no longer alone. I am not alone tonight because we are all Kennedys, and I am your president. So in terms of analysis, that was an American poem by Eileen Myles. Again, in terms of narrative, I think it's pretty clear what Eileen Myles is talking about here, kind of confessing that, or the narrator, because it's told from a fictional version of Eileen, but like the narrator is admitting that they are a Kennedy, that they come from this famous family that they've tried to escape, and they were successful. Only recently someone noting, hey, you look like a Kennedy, and so the narrator has decided to own up to this moniker, to acknowledging that they indeed are a Kennedy, but they note that it wasn't right for them to escape. What is it right for anyone to, to have so much power, especially when there are people who are struggling, who have AIDS, who don't have health care, who are homeless, who are dealing with quite a struggle, especially in a place like Washington, D.C., where Eileen Myles is focusing on in this story. Ultimately noting kind of how they are talking to a wider audience, talking to like maybe reciting this poetry to an audience, noting that we are all Kennedys, that we're all kind of good and that we're worthy or something like that, and ending the poem by saying, "And I am your president," noting that they are kind of leading this audience, hopefully in a positive direction. So this poem deals with feelings of guilt, of hope for a better future, of frustration, and a little bit of sort of shame over your profession, because at the end of the poem in particular, like the shame comes up in the form of maybe who you're presenting to, of how there are people struggling while you're out there making tons of money, and you're paying. Or the people who are consuming your art are more wealthy individuals. Like the way that you see that is like that they are alone, are good, deserve to buy the tickets to see this art. Art is capitalized, by the way. Are working, are healthy, should survive, and are normal. Are you normal tonight? And I think that really gets at a concern that a lot of artists have, and like who is viewing their art, who is consuming it. Because a lot of the times when you have a show or something like that, especially with Hamilton, like a lot of the people who are consuming that art were wealthy individuals who should be synthesizing that message, but might not be doing that. And you might not be presenting a very confrontational message because you depend on the money of these individuals. So you could be talking about how there's a great struggle going on, but you're not doing it in a way that confronts those people of wealth. All those people who come to see your show just want to be told that they're good and deserve to buy those tickets, that they're one of the good ones who actually care about this sort of thing, even though they might not be doing anything to actually benefit the world in that regard. So I like that aspect of the poem, how she's getting at like a very real concern that many artists have. But Also noting the struggle that's going on in the nation's greatest city, how people don't have a lot of food, how people are struggling with homelessness. It's a message that has been carried on through history that continues to this day, because politicians don't care to actually acknowledge or fix this problem. They only want to demonize the homeless and make the problem worse, because there's more money in prolonging the problem than there is in fixing that, especially for Republicans. And then near the beginning of the poem, the narrator notes that they've tried to escape from their identity, pretending not to be a Kennedy even though they are. And I want to say that is a very harmful kind of perspective to have, mainly because when you come from a place of power and privilege, as is this woman in this case, the issue with trying to run away from that is that you could very well make a positive difference with your position of power. And instead, you choose to exercise your privilege by escaping it and choosing to, pretend to be one of the regular people, one of the normal people, when you could in fact use that power or prestige that you have to make the world a better place in a meaningful way. So it's kind of not helpful in how the person in this poem, the woman, the narrator in this poem, chooses to exercise and hide. And maybe there's a sort of moment of realization where they could use their power in a meaningful way. I'm not completely sure if Eileen Myles is aware of that message that they're accidentally sending out there, but I do think in some ways that they are, that this is sort of a scathing poem about the fictional narrator here. But in a lot of cases, especially with liberals like Eileen Myles, there's a feeling that you can escape from your identity and hide from it, and you don't really need to use your privilege because having that privilege is bad. But you can use that privilege for a meaningful change, and the narrator in this poem doesn't seem to be doing that. And so those are my thoughts on American Poem by Eileen Myles. Pretty solid poem, even if there's some, narrative flaws, structural flaws that I note. But it's mostly high quality, and I definitely recommend it if you're looking for what is a seemingly timeless political poem, because it still feels relevant to today, even though it was written in 1991. If you have any thoughts on my review here, you simply want to comment on something I said, do so below. Let's have a discussion about an American poem. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this poem or this author or Poetry Thursday if they don't know about it already. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and Kennedy-like travels. Farewell.